I am back on the Slambretta build. This is my full air ride series 1/2 Lambretta. The frame is here and the engine is up here. Now we're in the middle of this build. I know I've got a lot of new subscribers, so let's put a little montage so you can catch up with the build so far. Starting to build the engine cradle there, adding to the frame before I chop the back off the original frame, and there's the engine cradle complete pretty much. Cutting out a hole for the back wheel and the first try with the airbag. Now I'm chopping into the front forks, cut those in half, got some stubby forks, built some temporary links, mocking up the front suspension with Harley Davidson air ride shocks. And there's the first test of the front suspension, cutting into the horn cover here so it fits over the wheel, and chopping up an old front mudguard to widen that to fit over all the suspension. Making room in the rear panel there for the kickstart, and there's the air ride system. Just testing that out. Yeah, it's working, back is going up, front is going up. Just adapting the toolbox there so the air ride all fits inside. Trip to Steve's, and he's chopping up the fuel tank, customised that for me so it fits in there. Here's a rear restraint strap, stop the thing lifting too high. The air ride system needs a battery, of course. I built a battery box and welded in brackets for that. Pretty much built a full custom kickstart so that would fit around the panel. Made a bracket for a rear titanium drag block to make some sparks. Just cutting up the exhaust to make it fit into the new frame. On the last episode I was welding up this frame and I'd like to get that just all finished off. There's a couple of small bits to do up in there where the restraint strap mounts. There's a couple of bits to weld up, I can't remember exactly now, but I just want to get all that welding finished off and then all the grinding down finished off. And I also want to finish off the welding to the engine cradle, so you can see here it's just tacked in. Put that back in the frame again and let's try and get these tabs mounted permanently, because once that's done, what I'd like to do is strip this down to bare metal and primer the frame, then we can start assembling it. Made up triangle, and that's gonna go in there. Fill this bit in with a tiny triangle as well. Kind of made that look all pretty, smoothed it all off, and big hole in there. I ground that well down as much as I need to really. It's all going to get painted and you'll never ever see in there. Obviously the restraint strap goes in there. And then I just went round and I did a load more smoothing. I spent way too long on this again. Smoothed all this down, smoothed all this down, smoothed all the things like this out. I even got into places like this. It's not perfect, but again with paint you'll never see that. I did throw some extra welds in a few places as well. There's a couple of places I missed. I'm going to swap now to this engine cradle. Pull this off the engine. This is the engine cradle I designed and built in all its glory. Just needs prettying up. For instance, this bit doesn't look finished, sticking out there. Yeah, this all needs tidying up. This pie cut thing here, need to weld that and grind all that smooth. Get some weld down here on the other side of these brackets. This is the hole where the airbag bolts up, and as you can see you can barely get a nut, let alone a nut and a socket. So I need to like cut some room out of here. I just want to knock this out, get this done, tidied up, not spent too long on this blooming thing. Using the hole saw to chop this out fairly neatly. Probably chopped out a bit more than I needed to. This thing though is built like a tank. It's so over-engineered. Just the fact that this plate on top is so thick. So I'm not worried about the strength, but also it gives me opportunity. If I needed to adjust the airbag, I could slot this hole and push it forward because all the tolerances are so tight. Or even re-drill a hole, and it still gives me plenty of room then without having to take all this apart to make a bigger hole. So I'm happy with that. And this was the little bit I just cut out, and I had a crazy idea. I need to cap off this. Of course, that would fit pretty well. And I think you'll agree that looks way better. Pleased with that. Next, everything else needs welding up. Went on the inside of these brackets. I mean, this thing is super strong now. Put some massive strong welds in all the way around there. So welded in bolts for the shocks. Big old weld on there. Looks a bit of a mess at the moment. There's loads of spatter and stuff, but I think it'll look pretty good once it's all cleaned up. Smoothed off to an extent, as good as I think it needs to be anyway. I'm not too worried about things like this. I think it adds to it a bit of character. Looks kind of handmade. Got all this smoothed off. That looks quite nice. So this is the side you're going to see mainly. That is rock solid. The engine cradle is done. As I've mentioned before, when the back wheel comes up into the frame, it's not quite square enough, and that's all to do with these tabs. These 4 tabs here are only tacked on at present. I need to break these off, clean everything up again, and weld those fully into the correct position. I did mention in previous episodes, Steve had made the offer that I could take Slambretta over to his place in Weston-super-Mare and put it on one of his frame jigs, and then we could weld these tabs in nice and square. But Steve is really busy at the moment. I just don't know when I'll have the opportunity to take the frame to him and get him to sort it out. So my plan is keep this thing moving forward and build my own frame jig. That is my rough plan, to build a frame jig and all the different bits of metal that I need to do that. This is the base of my frame jig, and it is 50 by 50 mil box section. I've actually got a load of this stuff because I am planning at some point to build a proper bench in that area there. At the moment, just got this bit of worktop and it is a bit flimsy. You can see these legs are actually, you know, cobbled on there. I did actually mount that to the wall, so it's not too bad, but yeah, I want to build a proper workbench there. I don't plan to weld actually to the metal at all, so I'll be able to cut it up at a later date to use for that bench. And to start with, I want to get the engine roughly sat into position. To do that, I'm going to take off the exhaust and the tyre and inner tube, because they're all going to get in the way. I've been working on and developing this jig setup quite a bit. It's just roughed in at the moment, clamps and odd bits of metal and stuff. But it's getting to a point where I know hopefully what I'm doing with it and it's going to work. Let's have a closer look and I'll show you what I mean. I have the 2 bits of 50 by 50 box sections running the entire length there. And this kind of thing I've pinched from designs that you see on the internet with motorcycle frame jigs. So that is sandwiched between the 2 box sections there, so that should be nice and straight up there. Then I've clamped this part of the scooter frame in there to keep that nice and straight. Now this is 50 by 50. The diameter of this part of the frame is I think 46, so I've got a couple of 2mm packers in there. That frame should be nice and vertical. This part of the frame is 65mm diameter. Obviously you've got the 150mm overall on the box section. So I've got 2 pieces of 40mm box section there. Again, a couple of 1 or 2mm packers either side. That is keeping the frame going back nice and straight as well. I've got this wheel now clamped in tight on the jig there, so I know the engine is nice and horizontal. And the rear wheel rim, it sort of measures about 77, 78, and I've got 2 pieces of 36mm wide, got those clamped in, and that engine is nice and straight. If you watch really closely on previous episodes, every time the scooter was aired out and the wheel came up into the frame here, it always favoured this side of the frame. Now I'm confident that the frame and the engine are all lined up clearly. What you can see is, yeah, these tabs aren't quite in the right place. they all need to come over slightly to the right. Took the frame off, I knocked off those tabs, cleaned those all up. There, the frame here, got it upside down, and I've cleaned up where those tabs locate. All back to bare metal so I can get a good weld. I have got the tabs here held in place with this bit of all thread bar. That's ready to tack on. Got my gauge here. There you can see the jig is at 0 degrees. I look at this stem which is holding the front of the frame in position. That's at 90 degrees there. And there we have 90 degrees on the flywheel. And of course, just eyeballing it, and that back wheel seems nice and central in the frame there. I'll get some tacks on, I think. I want to give this a little test. So I think I'm just going to loosen all the clamps, pull out the frame and the engine, and just see if we can chuck it up on the welding bench, put a tyre back on the back wheel, just watch it go up and down and see if it looks straight. Good news is the wheel looks bang in the centre of this hole that's cut out in the frame. Nice and straight, engine looks straight, etc. However, just lifting it up and down to test it, the issue I've got is there is a ton of play in the engine and frame, and that all comes back to this point here. Hopefully that's picking up on camera. There is a lot of play in there. Just going to take this bolt out and I'll show you what I think is the problem. It's all down to really the tolerance of everything. These tabs, there's a bit of movement in there with the bolt, and also this is the inside of the bushing there. That wiggles around quite a lot. I did even toy with the idea of having a panhard type bar coming from this part of the frame to this part of the engine cradle. That would locate it that way to stop it going backwards or sideways, sorry. Now the only issue with that is, because it'd be quite a short panhard bar, that would obviously operate in an arc. And I worked it out on paper, and that would actually move up to 20 mil, that arc. So even though it'd be good in the riding position, when it came to being laid out, it would push that wheel over 20 mil. I've been overthinking this for a few days now. I think my solution is to go back to almost the way the engine is mounted on an original frame, which is the long tube that goes into the frame, welds to the frame, and then the original engine bolt. So I'm going to leave these tabs in place rather than having two separate bolts. Cut this tube to fit in between the two tabs there, weld that all into place, and then I'll be able to use an original style engine bolt, and that'll just go through the whole lot, and it is a really nice snug fit. I'm hoping it'll take all the play out of that. It'll just end up much more like the original way the engine was mounted, but rather than it being mounted there, it'll be mounted further forward there. Got the frame sat vertical. This is the tube, if you like. Engine bolt through there. It's going to pivot like that, and already there's just zero movement now. So I'm just going to get this welded up, then have this center tube all welded in, and I've actually gusseted it from the top and the bottom. I've smoothed off a bit. It's not perfect, but once that's all painted, that'll be fine. Because of so much welding on this, the tube obviously did warp a little bit, so I ran a big 16mm drill bit through there and got a scotch pad. Next, I'm just going to reassemble everything, double check everything's okay. I've got these extra gussets there just to stop that moving around at all. When you lift this up, if I can do it one-handed, there is just zero movement now. It's rock solid. This is just dialed in now. There's no play with the frame and the engine moving at all. Just wanted to check the fuel tank, make sure that nothing was hitting, and there is just millimeters of clearance everywhere, so really pleased. So really I'm just watching for anything that looks untoward. If this engine sort of goes up and down at a weird angle, if anything catches, anything like that. That's really the smoothest that's ever gone up. Still got a little bit of clearance between the shocks there. I mean, that airbag is literally 1mm clearance, I think, from the fuel tank. So that all took way longer than it should have to get to this stage. I thought that was just going to be like a few hours work. There's one thing that, if you remember from a few episodes ago, I started playing with, and that is a rear mudguard. I did have just a cheap Repro mudguard, and I started trimming it and trimming it and trimming it to get it to fit into there. There wasn't a lot left of that mudguard. It's such thin metal that it was a waste of time basically. So I've given up on that mudguard. I've got some substantial metal now, and I want to just make a mudguard, and I'm actually going to weld it into the frame because I think it's going to add a lot of strength into this, partly with that drag block thing in mind, that if I dump the back down, I don't want this sort of bending upwards, and I just don't think it needs to be removable. I need to make a couple of templates. I've got a bit of cardboard here, and I'm just going to start following the line of the frame and offering it up inside. Bit of arts and crafts. Been trimming this bit of cardboard, and it's not too bad a fit. So the idea is I'm actually going to weld it along the line of this cutout here. Can't really follow the wheel exactly because see the tyre comes out there. It's almost like you have to sort of imagine the mudguard would stick out the top as well. So I'm going to cut that out of a bit of steel. Just want to pause this video for a second, just take a minute, because unfortunately I did suffer a big loss last night. Mr. Bosch has been with me for many years, and it ground its last piece of metal last night. Although you will be missed, you will never be forgotten. However, just nipped out and got Mr. Erbauer. Let's give this a go. Trimmed it a little bit more, and that's the first proper offer up inside there, and it's not bad. Obviously it's very rough at the moment, follows the line fairly well here. Obviously it needs to push this way a little bit. I figured I could do the fit up actually with a frame lifted up in the air like that. I've got a block of wood there, and that's one side, and I've made the other side. Just put it up there and just check out this for a bit of fitment. That side's actually come out slightly better than the first side. Do have to notch this side though, because it does just hit on that back brake lever there. Got this thing pulled apart for the umpteenth time, and you'll get a bit more of an idea of what's going on here. That is going to go in there, weld along there, weld to the structure there, weld to that piece of the frame there. To start with, I'm just going to tack this to the loop here. Next I need to cut a piece of metal to go in here. This is 3mm steel, but I'm going to make this section out of something a bit thinner because it needs to potentially bend slightly. You know, it doesn't need to be super thick. These bits obviously need to be fairly chunky. So I've got this piece of metal, and I'm going to try and get it into there. It's going to take a bit of fiddling, and now you can see why I made it in slightly thinner metal, because it needs to bend around this curve. Depending how neatly this flows there, I may have to break these tacks off and pull the whole thing out. Let's see how we get on. Couple of issues. Forgot I didn't have the gas turned on for about 4 or 5 little tacks there. So anyway, once the gas was on, that all tacked in fine. And the other issue was this was just a little bit long here, so it wouldn't allow this to come up, if you see what I mean, to meet these side bits. So I trimmed that off, and of course I trimmed it off a bit too much. It was difficult to get my grinder in there, so it is what it is. But I think a little bit of filler rod in there, I'll be able to weld that fine. The good news is I don't think I'm going to need to pull this back out again, because it actually looks pretty neat. If you can see, I know this is upside down, but if you can see along there, nothing special here, just got a rectangle which is going to sit in there. Let's get all that welded in. After many hours of welding and even more of grinding, check this out. That is one mudguard installed. And from the back here, I'm really pleased at how this has come out. These blended edges. Obviously I've fully welded down both sides here. It looks kind of just all finished off now, rather than I've just cut a big hole in the back of the loop. There you can see up inside. Ground these welds down as much as I could. It's obviously difficult to get anything in there to smooth them off, but that's all going to have a thick layer of paint in there. I'll just put a bit of seam sealer in all of there, and that'll all have some nice thick paint. Up inside there, put a light on, that might help. See, I've got a nice curved section there. Do need to just double check those electrics still fit in there. Still got access there to do the nuts up on the drag block. I need to make some access holes on the bottom side of this frame. You can have a footboard on there, floor runners, bolt down here, here. Now I've got access to the underneath of these on the original part of the frame, but at the moment I've got no access to actually get a nut underneath there, so I need to do a hole saw big enough to get a nut with a socket from underneath, if you see what I mean. So I'm going to turn the frame over and drill those. So these are actually from a Series 3, but it's the same sort of thing that I'll fit on this Series 2 frame, and they have like an M5 bolt sticking out of them, and that will come through the frame there. They take one of these small little nuts, and I've drilled a big enough hole I can literally put a socket in there and do those up. Made some clearance here. The front is slightly different. There's actually a bolt that comes through, and I'll probably have to get some longer bolts, and I'll put a penny washer. I've oversized them a little bit because I want some adjustment in there. Wanted to do away with the chrome ring. Did have to heat that up a ton of times, and I did manage to knock it out. I want to try and fit the front horn cover. And if you remember, this is a Series 2 frame originally, so there's no mounts here for that horn cover. I'm going to offer up the leg shields, get those roughly into place. I made this cardboard template, just a little curved section at the bottom, straight along the top, and that just about fits in true YouTube magic. That's the cardboard version, and there it is, made from metal. Drilled cut the holes, got the studs on the bracket there, just going to weld these up from the back. I'll cut these off to length once it's on the scooter. It's got the bracket in there bolted up. I think if I just get one decent tack up there, I should be able to pull all this off. Welded on, tidied up a bit. And if I'm not wrong, that's the only thing you need to convert a Series 2 frame to a Series 1, because that holds that in there. Pretty nifty. And you may have noticed as well, I actually welded on a stud there for the horn. In fact, I just used a bit I cut off there. M8 again, I think that's right. The horn can go on there. Now, in putting this horn cover on and off, I've realised something else, and that's to do with the toolbox. Now, if anyone knows these toolboxes, they normally have fixings on the inside. Once this is full of the air ride system, you can barely get your hand in. So if I wanted to remove that toolbox with all the air ride stuff in there, it'd be almost impossible. And I've got a feeling, you know, working on this air ride, that toolbox has got to come on and off a lot. So what I've done is I've cut the brackets from the inside I welded on new brackets actually, needs a bit of tidying up. Sorry, I've got a mismatch of hardware. So all 4 fixing positions are external now. And what I'm going to do is actually weld the nuts on here. It'll be hidden by the horn cover anyway. So in the future, to remove this toolbox, all I need to do is 4 13mm sockets, and that'll pull straight off, and that'll give me good access to that air ride system. I know it's not really to do with the frame what I'm doing now, but I'm probably going to get this shot blasted at the same time as the frame, so I just want to get kind of most of the welding done on that. I think there will be a few more repairs once all this 1/2 inch of filler has come off. There's one more issue, and that's to do with the electrics. If you remember on a previous episode, I did mount them up inside there, but since I've welded this mudguard in, I just can't really get to there. I mean, I'd be able to bolt the electrics in when I was building the scooter, but if I needed to plug something in or unplug it, if there was ever an issue, it would be an absolute nightmare to try and get right up into there. Here are the 2 things I need to mount, and the solution is to mount them in a position a bit more similar to an original scooter. One on the side there, I think, and one up in there. And then if there's ever an issue, I can easily plug things in and out. I'm going to need to make a couple of tabs and just get those welded on. So let's get a bit of cardboard again and just see if we can make sense of that and where the tabs are going to go. Got the 2 little brackets welded on that they need tidying up. I'll weld this one from the back side when I pull it all apart for the final time. This needs grinding down, but I need to drill a hole through this frame rail, and it's pretty awkward to get into, so I like to dig this out every now and then. It's my little right angled adapter thing. This thing looks the business now. There's the electrics. I just need to drill that hole all the way through once I pull it all apart. The HT lead darts down really nicely. This mudguard just going to protect all those electrics and everything like that. Really like the view from the rear end here when it's completely aired out. On this video, as well as the big things like getting the engine cradle properly finally mounted and doing that mudguard, I have tweaked and redone a few things. The electrics are really easy to get to. Remember, I drilled out that engine cradle, so the airbag comes in and out much easier now. The toolbox is going to be a dream. It's just like 4 external bolts. So if I need to service that air ride system at all, that's going to be super easy. Even the front horn cover is going to be pretty easy to come on and off. Where possible, I've welded nuts so I don't have to use 2 hands and try and get into places. And that is everything I think needs doing to the frame before I strip it down and send it off for blasting and primer. Let's give this one last test before I pull it apart. I just want to say I really do appreciate everyone's support. This time in the build where people's interest start to wane a little bit, I've had a couple of comments like, are you going to be riding it in the next video? Maybe it has taken a bit longer than I would have hoped, but it's getting there, and I feel like the end product is going to be better the more time I take. Next time you see the scooter, the frame at least will be in paint. It'll all be one colour, so I'm super excited about that. And then we can start the process of paint and final assembly. Really excited to crack on with this. And this year I am a bit quieter with my band, but of course there's other life commitments that get in the way, but I will try and get regular videos out. So yeah, please do keep checking back on the channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Really appreciate any likes and comments on the video. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. We have merchandise for sale. I'm shamelessly plugging the Slambretta t-shirts, and also we have some Cobweb Garage mugs. I'll put a link below to the merchandise. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.